Sure. Thanks, everybody, and welcome to our information session. I'm going to start by just introducing you to the people here who are ready to answer your questions. My name is Kathy Hibbert. I am the Associate Dean of Teacher Education. We are all located in one office. So as I introduce the rest of the folks here, you'll start to become accustomed to the faces that you will hopefully see in person in the fall. So I'm going to go by the order of my Hollywood Squares. I've got Katie Mentone right below us. Katie is our program manager, and as you can see from the chart, sorry, not the program, yes, program coordinator. I always mess this up. Katie looks after our alternative field experiences, T2P, which is transition to practice, and she looks after a blog and communications to make sure that you're informed of whatever we learn in a very timely way. Joanne Lombardi is below Katie on my screen, and Joanne is our practicum and community engagement coordinator. So she will be helping facilitate all of your practica experiences, as well as she's been making some new opportunities in our community, both for potential alternative field experiences with Katie, but also because this pandemic has opened up opportunities for us to do practica in different ways. And she'll be telling you more about that over the next 2 years. Underneath that, I have Rebecca Kolb. Rebecca is our program assistant, and she is someone you've probably heard a lot from, because she's in charge of admissions and transitioning from an applicant to a teacher candidate. So I'm sure you've already had some interaction with Rebecca. Next, we have Cindy Barnes, and Cindy is the practicum and field experience assistant. So she supports both Joanne and Katie in terms of helping get those practica and field experiences organized, setting up communications and so on, making sure you have all of the paperwork that you need to go into those spaces. Courtney Klein, I don't see Courtney on my screen, but she is with us, I'm sure. There she is. She's got her camera on. Courtney is our International Baccalaureate Certificate Program Coordinator. And so she can answer all questions for people who are interested in getting a certificate in the International Baccalaureate, either while they're doing their Bachelor of Education or after. So you'll be hearing from Courtney as well. And Kathy Cornett, are you here online? No? Okay, so Kathy Cornett, when you come to campus and you come into the teacher education office, Kathy's the first person that you see. She's our administrative assistant. She's in charge of ordering all kinds of materials. She's in charge of, gathering all those documents that you have to collect, like your police checks. And when you have to be absent during a practica, you have to get a hold of her immediately so that she can inform the proper folks who need to know. And last but certainly not least, we have Anna Zuber, who is the program manager. Anna is likely also someone that you've interacted with already. That name will be very familiar to you because she oversees all of the program aspects, including, and she's got this on the chart and I'm happy to see that, including accommodation. So for those of you who have any kind of learning needs that require us to do anything differently, you actually have to go through Student Services at Western and submit registration with Student Services to receive accommodation. They take in all kinds of paperwork as needed, and then they come back and inform our program in terms of what kinds of accommodations we can possibly make. I'll tell you quickly, it's a back and forth process because accommodations cannot be such that they interrupt the integrity of the program. At the end of the day, we have to be able to confidently say to the College of Teachers, this person is ready to be in a classroom with a group of students independently and be responsible for their safety and their learning. So this is in particular important right now because I know a question is going to come up about accommodating people who may hope to not come back face to face. So I'm just going to address that briefly now, and I know we're going to talk about it later. We had a meeting just this morning. The decision about whether the university is face to face is made by the university, not the Faculty of Education. And it is made in consultation with the Middlesex London Health Unit. And right now they are predicting that we will all be face to face with no physical distancing requirements, but with a mandatory mask requirement and lots of antiseptic wipes and hand sanitizer. If you have some kind of situation where you are medically compromised, you must contact Student Services and seek an accommodation. The accommodation, if it's beyond what is something that can reasonably done, the accommodation may be that you simply need to defer for a year. So I'm not going to go into that in any more detail now, but I just thought I'll put that out there. It's fresh off the dean's lips this morning, and welcome. Okay, so we have some other friendly faces here, or people that you might want to be aware of, or websites that you need to know. So Sarah Treesh, as the person who is in our student council, I believe, Vice President Academic Affairs for Education Students Council. So she's got all kinds of information about conference week. And she's also showing you what her particular teaching specialty is. So IS, teaching subject, STEM related, those are the kinds of interests that she brings. But as the VP Academics for the Education Student Council, she's in charge of Conference Week and other questions about Education Students Council. We also have Victoria Morish, who is BEd class of 2022, and Victoria is the Ontario Secondary School Teachers Federation Commissioner, and she can answer questions as she's indicated there with IS, Urban Specialities, and IB. We have Flo Getz, who is our incoming ESC president. Congratulations again, Flo. And you will be hearing from Flo quite a bit, I suspect, in the upcoming months to learn about how you can get involved with the Education Students Council, the kinds of events that they run, the kinds of supports that are available, and so on. And technical support. This is going to be an important link for you to know about. So there is, the first link is telling you about self-service. So you can go and check things out there. You may find your answers. They have frequent question and answers. They've got all kinds of supports and materials, links there. But if you need something specific, the second link, the JIRA, J-I-R-A, puts in a ticket that will immediately go to the tech services folks, and someone will get back to you within usually 24 hours. Other important links, there are Education Student Council socials. There's a Facebook page, a Twitter address, and an Instagram address so that you can start following those and keep up to date that way as well. And then Rosie Treibner is someone that you will get to know in the 2 years that you're here. Rosie is our Director of Community Engagement and Development. So she ensures that when you leave us, you are never forgotten because you become part of our alumni. And so she stays in touch and continues to update you and let you know what's going on when you leave here and ways that you can be involved. Thanks, Katie. So our program overview. Katie has created this nice infographic, and I find it particularly useful because it gives you a sense that in year one, depending on your specialty, you will have about 11 to 15 courses in a term, which is higher than what you've been accustomed to in your undergrad. So time management becomes really quite important. And they've estimated that that's between 21 and 31 hours of class per week. In year two, you have 8 to 12 courses per term and 16 to 24 hours of classwork per term. As you can see on the top bar, you start year one in class, and then you have a practica. You start again in class after Christmas, and then you have a practica to end your year. The reason you have fewer courses in year two is because we flip that, and you actually begin with a practica in year two so that you can experience what it's like at the very beginning of the year to set up a classroom, establish routines, get to know students, all of those important things, so that the following year when you're employed, we hope, that you will have had that exposure and that experience. There is coursework in there as well. And then there are two, as you can see throughout the year, alternative field experiences. We do have these in this particular linear framework, but in the last couple of years that we've been dealing with the pandemic, we have found a number of ways to create alternative field experiences that may offer more flexibility than this graphic organizer shows. And some of those alternative field experiences, for example, may be available in summer months, and some of them may be available over a term in the evenings or on weekends or in an elongated form. So this gives you a sense of what the norm is, but there are some times that there can be some flexibility. You'll notice too that we have pass-fail set up there. Pass-fail is something that we moved to as a Faculty of Education a couple of years ago. So you are the second year coming into the pass-fail program. So students who graduated year two this year were the last students to graduate in a numerically graded system. The reason that we went to the pass-fail was because we did a lot of research on looking at our program, looking at professional practice, and trying to think about how to align this transition period that you are in between being a numerically graded student in an undergrad program to being in a professional school to going into a profession. In the profession, when you are evaluated by your principal, as you will be, you go through a couple of phases. You go through something called NTIP, which is a new teacher induction program, and then you go into an annual learning plan. Neither of those have numerical grades. All of them, or both of them, I should say, are built around the concept of we are professionals who are responsible to adhere to the standards of practice that the Ontario College of Teachers has laid out, both the professional standards and the ethical standards. And that as professionals, one of the things that you have to understand is that you're responsible for identifying your gaps in learning, the places that you need to develop to ensure that you're meeting those competencies, and setting a plan in place for how you're going to further develop them. So we felt it was really important to model that in your teacher education experience. So we created this pass-fail process, which we are still working on improving. Nothing is ever perfect the first year you roll it out, but we are asking you to complete all of your coursework the way that you would. You will be getting feedback. That feedback could also include having to resubmit if it's not meeting the standard. The standard for a pass in this new system would be equivalent to 76%, I think it is. And And if the instructor does not feel that you've achieved that, you will be asked to resubmit. And it certainly is possible to fail. It's rare because most of you have come in with such enormously high grades to begin with that it's not about grades now. It's about asking you to think about how is what you're learning in this program going to help you be a better teacher and serve your students in your future classrooms. So rather than having you say, why did I only get an 89 instead of an 80 or an 89 instead of a 94? We want you to be asking, how is this helping me support students in my future classroom? What can I be doing better? How can I grow that practice? So it's a bit of an adjustment, but one of the things that you'll understand in this program is, like going to medical school or law school, you are entering a profession and there are very high expectations because you're coming into a program that is in the public trust. You're responsible for people's children, right? And that is a very high standard that you will be held accountable for and to. We often talk about when we get our diplomas or our degrees at the end, they always talk about the rights, the privileges, and the responsibilities. And people spend a lot of time thinking about the rights and the privileges. The responsibilities are key. So we have expectations of all of our students coming into this program. You will see a new student code of conduct that was, I'm proud to say, authored by the Education Students Council president and some members of that council, and has passed through our equity committee, and it lays out pretty clearly what's expected of someone who is going into a profession that is held in the public trust. The last thing I'm going to say, because I don't want to take up all the time, is that we are really excited about something that we've been doing this year called a curriculum innovation framework. We're in a moment in our time, in our lives, I should say, thanks, Katie, where, you know, we have Me Too, we have Black Lives Matter, we have our Indigenous Strategic Plan, and, you know, today's horrifying news that we have yet another 750 plus bodies that have been found. We have in London, Ontario, where we are located, we have had a horrific terrorist act that has grown out of Islamophobia. In a month when we're supposed to be celebrating Pride. So we had started thinking about this over the last couple of years about how we might be thinking differently about our courses. The courses, of course, always will focus on the subject area expertise that you develop. But in our innovation framework, we asked ourselves to think more deeply about what innovation in teacher education can look like when it seeks to foster transformational change, where the values on which such change are predicated are not about just increased productivity or lower cost or even greater mobility, but social justice and equity. Okay, what does it mean when it promotes professional learning and development within sustainable career structures for teachers, socially and politically engaged student learning, and a community-oriented view of schools as institutions and levers of positive social change? What does it mean to learn to teach and improve your teaching from a critical perspective where teacher development is centered on equity and social justice? And what are ways that we can promote innovation in teacher education that create new ideas that have public value for the whole of society, but especially for those who have been poorly served historically and continue to be so? So we invited this year, with the support of the university through some funding, we have 23 teacher candidate and I think 3 of them are graduate students they're research interns who've been working with us and combing through all of our courses and asking ourselves these questions. What can we be doing differently? How can we ensure that everyone in our program feels safe, included, valued? And how can we ensure that those are the kinds of foci that we are inculcating in teachers who are going to go into schools and make sure that they create safe, inclusive, equitable environments for all students. And so some of that has taken a flavor of decolonizing work. Some of it is taking anti-racist pedagogies, gender-informed perspectives, Indigenous ways of knowing. So we've been looking through all of our curriculum with a lens to try to do this. That curricula will be in place when you arrive in September. They're finishing it up right now. The course outlines will all be finished in July. At the same time, you come with a responsibility as our incoming students to accept this very big and very important responsibility to be a teacher of all students and to value and respect, especially those that have been marginalized and have had to deal with some very challenging systemic barriers throughout their lives. I'm telling you this now because we are developing what we are calling an integrity module that you will all be required to take before you can begin your coursework in September. We have a student who's working on it right now, and it grew out of conversations that we had with our student council, with our student body, with our faculty, in light of a hate-filled incident that is completely unacceptable in the teaching profession. And so we want to make sure that it's just super, super clear to everyone that if you do not come with a humility about who we are and our own past experiences, an open mind to understanding that the world is changing and that we all have bias. It's, somebody wrote that it's like having, it's like the communication around COVID. Assume you have it and take the measures that are needed to ensure that you don't pass it on to someone else. We have to bring that assumption that we are all biased. Our lived experience, we may not think we are, we may not intentionally be biased, but that doesn't cut it anymore. We actually have to better educate ourselves to ensure that we are not perpetuating harm. So this little integrity module is going to be an introduction to that. It's going to sort of set the stage for what we expect of this generation of teachers and how we have come to understand, primarily, I think, through the Truth and Reconciliation call to action, where they laid out specifically that education was a big player in perpetuating problems, in not providing historical truths, and hiding the reality. It's horrifying to think that all of these things happened and many people in Canada went their merry way through their lives completely oblivious. We can't be oblivious anymore. We have to stare this in the face and we have to act differently. And that means not just saying that we're going to, not just telling people we're committed, but actually doing explicitly in our curricula, in our work together, and the expectations of our students that any kind of racist behavior will not be tolerated and will, in all likelihood, result in you being pulled out of the program. So just know that, okay? All right, you got me on a tangent there. So now we'll move on to the more interesting part of the program, which is trying to help that we, trying to make sure, sorry, that we are answering the questions that you've submitted. So I'm going to turn that back over to Anna.
Thank you, Kathy. Hi there, everybody. It's nice to see such a lovely turnout this afternoon. And thank you very much for submitting questions ahead of time. It really helps us to target the topics that are top of mind for all of you. So Joanne and I, and perhaps others, are going to kind of take turns going through the questions you've submitted. So I'm going to kick it off. You can see on the slide, we've got some little brief points there. So it is interesting that, you know, typically when you're thinking of applying to the BEd, you've likely come in to talk to one of us and maybe even been on a tour. So but we do luckily have a little YouTube for you if you'd like to check that out. And we'll be sharing this slide deck as well as part of the recording. So don't panic if, you know, that's a bit of an address right there. So don't scramble to get that written down right this minute. And if you're new to Western and or new to London, there's also lots of information about that on, there's a link from the Faculty of Education website as well, but this link is right to the Western welcome page and may be of interest to you as well. So you may hope, well, hopefully you've seen the calendar for your first year, the academic calendar, the one that shows when you'll be in class and when you'll be on practicum. We've shared that a couple of times by email, and it's also on the blog. The first date that you'll officially begin the program is September the 2nd with some orientation, but we've decided to hold that online again this year, simply because things are still, you know, a little bit in flux as to how the summer will unfold. So just for the purposes of your planning and ours, prepare or plan to be online with us that day. We do want you to be there. As Kathy mentioned, this is a professional program. We expect you to participate to the fullest extent. And plus, it's kind of fun. You know, it's a way to get to know a little bit about the program. We try to help you connect with one another as best we can in a virtual world, but do plan to be there. We will send more information with timing as soon as we have that. Typically, I think last year it was a couple maybe hours in the morning, not too bright and early, but just keep that in mind. And then after that, you'll join us for classes beginning Tuesday, September the 7th, the same day that school resumes in Ontario. So we kick you off in teacher mode and have you begin that day as well. So before you get to us and begin your classes, do keep an eye on your Western email. As we've mentioned in several other communications, your Western email is the only one that we use to communicate with you. We also post things on the blog fairly regularly, and new this spring, really, we're going to start sending out roughly monthly newsletters. You will have received your first one a week or so ago. And we'll use that newsletter format to keep you up to date with things, issue reminders, maybe direct you to the blog on occasion, just to make sure you're seeing all of the things that are important. Make sure you also review the new student checklist that's on the blog. We would have directed you to that in a few emails, I believe, just to make sure you've not lost track of anything. We have asked for several things from you already. A police check that includes vulnerable sector screening, proof of your identity, completion of a health and safety module that's required for practicum, and coming up soon, the integrity module. Also, completion of your practicum school board choice. I know that a couple of you had trouble getting into that portal. We are trying to sort that out, but in the meantime, you can just send us an email and tell us your board choice. It's not a big problem if you can't get into the portal. And then about your classes, lots of questions around classes, which is understandable. So you can see a repetition there of what your term and year will look like. You will be in many more courses than you're used to, as Kathy said. I will, help ease your mind a little bit though. So you're used to taking, 0.5 credits, 1.0 credits. Most of the BEd program is 0.25 credits and 0.5 credits, very few 1.0, although the teaching subject courses in IS are of that weight. So you're not going to be carrying any more credit weight than you're used to. You'll still be achieving about 5 credits in each of the years, but those are just comprised of a lot more smaller courses. And so when you see your timetable, it is going to look quite a bit more intense than what you're used to seeing, but try not to let that panic you. It's going to be okay. You can expect to be here Monday to Friday, and classes can begin as early as 8:30 in the morning. And in year one, they end by 6:30. Year two, because of the more condensed time frame to be in classes, we do have a bit of a later end date in some cases. So you don't need to worry about that today, but just so you know for next year. We've got those calendars posted so you can see when you're in class and on practicum, as I mentioned earlier. So have a look at those. Let's see. Yes, we're here in London, Ontario. That's the street address right there. So you can plug that into your GPS if you need to. Not many really of our courses have textbooks anymore. There's much more use of online resources. And what you'll need to have with you will be outlined in your syllabus during your first week of class. We don't typically suggest that you worry too much about gathering textbooks over the summer, partly because we're still not finished with getting the syllabi ready. We are still in the process of hiring instructors as well. So there's lots of time that your instructors will make sure that you understand in your first class what's required of you. We had lots of questions around creation of schedules, and as we've communicated before, you don't need to worry. We make those for you. The courses you take are all mandatory, so it's not like your undergrad where you had pretty much always a list of, you know, take one of these or two of these or whatever. Everything you take is mandatory for your particular program stream. And so we found over the years that it's just simpler for us to put you in the things that you need rather than have you try to sort out a great long list of things. And then if by chance you are in a section of a course at a time that maybe isn't ideal, we're happy to try to work with you to move that around. We do have an add drop swap week, the first week of classes. If at this very moment you're thinking, oh geez, I wish I didn't have to come to class on Wednesday afternoon, email Rebecca or me. Our email addresses are right there. And both of us have written to you before, so you should find us in your inbox somewhere. And just let us know. We can't promise, because if you are in a course or need to be in a course that only runs on Wednesday afternoon, then you're going to have to be there. But if we can be flexible, we absolutely will be. And it's better if you tell us now, as we're just starting to work on scheduling. It's easier to plan that now than to try to rejig everything after the fact. So please reach out if you need to. It does take a while. There are a number of you. And so in some cases, we have to do these one at a time almost. So it does take a while. We will be emailing you in early August to tell you that your schedule is complete and that you can then view it in your student center. So if you are familiar with your student center, if you are already a Western student and you've been looking at your schedule in the student center for 4 years, you're going to notice things happening there. Until we email to say your schedule is complete, it is not complete. And it is possible for something you see to move around if we have to solve a conflict or something like that. Okay, so we appreciate your patience there. We had a few questions around attendance, and Kathy clarified already the plan of the university to bring us back on site and that you will need to be with us. Things come up though, we understand that. You might be ill, and certainly as we're coming hopefully through the pandemic, you know, the protocol will still be, if you're feeling unwell, please stay home. So you just need to be professional about it. Let your instructor know as soon as possible, preferably before the absence. Be prepared to make up the things that you've missed. If you've missed a bit of time, you know, maybe you need to miss 2 classes in a row of a particular course, the instructor might decide that a little makeup work needs to happen just to ensure your understanding. It's not meant as a punishment. It's meant to ensure that you are able to have the content that maybe you missed in class, that you can demonstrate your understanding of what's going on. Let's see, specialty areas. I've talked to quite a few of you lately about specialty area. I realize it's maybe not always crystal clear what those are all about. So think of them more as electives, in the sense that they let you explore an area of interest within your BEd program, connected to education, of course. The specialty areas that we offer represent areas of need in education in the world. and they are either taught or coordinated by our faculty experts in these areas. So they don't add to your teaching qualifications, but because the credits are needed to graduate, everybody has to have a specialty area. And I'm continuing to work with maybe about a dozen of you where you weren't able to be confirmed for maybe your first or second choice. And don't worry, we're going to get you in an area that is of interest to you. The good news is that when you're confirmed for your area, I make sure you are in all of the courses that are associated with that, conflict-free. You don't have to worry that you're going to miss out on anything. All right, I think the next slide is about practicum, so I'm going to let Joanne talk for a bit.
Thanks, Anna, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. I do see a question here, and I think it was also in the Dropbox about finding out what board you're placed in. As Anna mentioned, we have asked candidates to let us know their preferred school board choice. If you had difficulty getting that done, and there may be some issues with logging in to do that, you can just send an email to me. My email is in the middle of this slide screen, and we'll be sure to record your board of choice. We notify the candidates as soon as we can once the majority of our placements are available. So that sounds very ambiguous, and I apologize for that. But the placement process can be a little bit complicated in that we are placing students in 42 school boards across Ontario, and we need to match your qualifications, your area of primary, junior, intermediate, or senior. And working with different boards, we sometimes have to wait for the board to get back to us. Our process is dual track. Some placements, we actually do the placement ourselves directly with school principals or board representatives, but primarily school principals. And then in other cases, we submit a list of practicum requests to the school board. They work in their own method, and they send us back confirmation. So there have been times where a confirmed placement is given back to us very close to the practicum date. And that is just something that is sometimes unavoidable and out of our control. But typically, we will try to have all placements secured and readily available for your information a couple of weeks before the placement begins. We send out a notification to the candidates to let them know that the portal is open. That's kind of our key word. And the portal is where you would find your placement information, okay? So when you get the notification that the portal is open, you go to the portal, you see the school listed there with the grade, assignment, and the teacher's contact information. And at that point in time, you are expected to reach out to the teacher to introduce yourself, and the process has begun. But you will be kept up to date throughout the process, and we'll certainly do our best to give you that information as far in advance of the placement as we possibly can. But I do want to assure you that if some of your colleagues receive information and your portal is still showing that there's no placement for you yet, be assured that we're still waiting for it. It's still actively in process. We just don't have it confirmed that we can post. There could be some delays to posting practicum information, and that would be related to whether or not you have all of your documentation in place. So for example, if we don't have your vulnerable sector screening documentation on file, we will not post the practicum placement for your viewing, because we need to have our assurances and guarantees that all documentation has been presented to us so that you're ready to go out for this very important practicum, okay? Can you adjust your school board preference? You will have 4 placements throughout the 2 years. And prior to each placement, we do send a reminder to the candidates asking them to confirm their board preference. That we recognize is an important thing to do because things can happen. And while you signed up and you want your second practicum perhaps to be in Grand Erie, between now and second placement, you may actually be moving or something in your personal life has changed and Grand Erie is no longer the board you want to be in, for example. So we do give you a chance prior to each practicum to review your practicum placement choice and then we'll work on that information. Okay, so while you may have chosen 4 practicum locations already, we do give you an opportunity to review those. It's a couple months before, because our practicum search does begin always a couple months before, okay? But keep in mind that we can work with you should changes need to be made. And if there are ever any unexpected changes that happen, and we do know, as has been mentioned by both, I think, Kathy and Anna, that sometimes things happen in life that are unanticipated, please contact me directly, and we'll certainly work with you to support any practicum needs that you have, okay? Practicum will be in your desired board of choice. We will do our very, very best to find you a suitable placement in the location that you have chosen. It is possible that within the location or the desired board, you may have to do some travel. Some of our practicum boards are geographically quite large. Some areas ask to define what region or zone you might want to be in, and other boards do not do that. But if you have chosen a board, be prepared to travel within that board. You may or may not be in the major urban area. You may be located directly outside the city, perhaps. So that is something that you just need to be prepared to do. Okay, if we have difficulty finding a proper practicum placement for you in your desired board of choice, be assured that we will reach out to you and have a discussion with you. Coming out of COVID, we anticipate that our practicum placement process will run quite smoothly, but I can tell you with great delight that our candidates last year all received practicum placements. It took some creativity sometimes, some flexibility at other times, on both our behalf as well as our candidates, and on behalf of our associate teachers too. But I am going to assure you that we have a vast range of highly skilled, eager, and keen associate teachers throughout Ontario. I get emails all the time from associate teachers commenting on the caliber and the quality of our teacher candidates, and they will welcome you warmly. However, you do have to understand that the practicum process or placement process is complex, and you may not, get that immediate, class you desired, or that immediate school right next to your neighborhood, but we are doing our best to support that. We do find the practicum placement for you. We do not encourage or ask that our teacher candidates look for their own placement. That is our job. My colleague Cindy and I are on this 5 days a week, and as I said, we've got a great wealth of available people who are willing to open their doors to us. So the placement process is our responsibility, and your responsibility will be to accept that placement, show up ready, keen, and eager to learn. To prepare for practicum, prior to going out, you will have reached out to your associate teacher, and they will certainly give you some advice on things such as parking, dress code, whatever's required for you to, arrive on time and settle in. Keep in mind that it's like going to a job, and all of those important parts of showing up are going to be required of you. Punctuation, dress code, decor, demeanor, and all of that you can review in advance with your associate teacher, and they'll let you know what you need to bring, okay? Your vulnerable sector screening check should be, you should have that hopefully in process now, applying for that. You apply for that in the region in which you live, okay? It needs to come from your local police force or police department. And once you get that, you can send a copy to us. It's not listed on this screen, but it's the generic education email, eduwo@uwo.ca. And my colleague Kathy will track those, and she'll chase you down if you haven't sent that to us, okay? Many of the boards, not all of them, but many boards have gone to a 6-month timeline. They want an updated VSS every 6 months. And that may or may not be true for your board. We do have a page on our blog that lists all the different board requirements, but we do recommend for all of our candidates that you submit a VSS to us in the summer. If we can have it by August 1st, that would be great. It just helps with our tracking system, but we would like a VSS sent to us by August 1st, and that should have been received recently. We don't want one from last January. We want one basically from May on, and then we will remind you again in December to submit another one. The reason for that is on occasion, and this happened a lot last year, we sometimes had to move our candidates into a different board, albeit a close neighboring board. But because of that, and because each board has their own requirements, we found that occasionally there were delays in practicum because if we had to move a candidate from one board to another and the second board had a different requirement for VSS, it held the process up. So to streamline the practicum process, it just is incredibly helpful for your comfort to know that you've got everything you need for any assignment we give you to send in that VSS twice a year to us. And that will just absolutely assure you and assure us that we've got what we need to find a suitable placement for you. Okay, so that's it on VSS. Katie, I'll get you to change the slide. I can't recall if there's another one on practicum or not.
Oh, on-site protocols. I can take that one, Joanne, if you like.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, lots of good questions around this and legitimate questions too, as we try to acclimatize to coming back to being with groups of people again. So as I mentioned, we will though plan for online orientation just because that gives us lots of lead time to put that in place, and then not to worry about having to physically be in London that day. And then some of these we've touched on already, but just a refresher in case anyone maybe had joined a bit late. But indeed, Western's decision is a broad decision that affects all of the programs on campus. So there would not be an online option that's specific to the BEd program. If we are on site, the BEd is on site as well. And the expectation is that you are attending classes in person. We do understand, of course, that there's some nervousness perhaps around that. And as Kathy mentioned early on, that, we are happy to grant deferrals until next fall. If that makes it easier for you, just reach out to me in an email if that's something you'd like to explore. That's not a problem at all. It means you're guaranteed a spot in September 2022, so nothing to worry about there in terms of losing your spot. But we do understand that there's still some things that are challenging right now. Safety measures on campus, so fully masked, as Kathy mentioned. We'll also have lots of hand sanitizer and things around in all the classrooms, likely dispensers in the hallways. I believe they're already there. They'll be sticking around in office spaces. Wherever you'll be going on campus, there'll be lots of sanitizer, etc. around. One of the things Western is doing to at least do some tracking on the situation as the fall unfolds for sure is a daily return to campus questionnaire that applies to all coming to campus, faculty, staff, and you as students. You'll need to complete that each day just to confirm that you're feeling fine, you've not been exposed to COVID to your knowledge. And then, of course, we do continue to consult with our local health unit to make sure that we are doing and making decisions that keep safety at the forefront. I don't have a specific answer around the eating and drinking. Interestingly, that's really important. Of course, we have to do those things, and presumably removing your mask to do so is totally fine. But as more information comes to us, I'm part of a committee at the moment that does receive updates on planning for the fall, roughly monthly right now, and probably more frequently as the summer unfolds. So we'll be sure to communicate with all of you as we know more things. But note that your classes will be typically 2 hours in length. Generally, that means there's a bit of a break in the middle, about 10 minutes, and then classes end on 20 past the hour so that you have 10 minutes then to get to your next class. All of your classes are in our Faculty of Education building though, so you don't need to be rushing all around the campus. So that's maybe good to know as well. Okay, that is it for this one. I think the next slide is maybe for Katie, although I might have lost track. Yep. Okay.
Here we are, employment prep. So we had a few questions come in about getting ready for employment. What will it look like after the program's done? The first one was, do you provide employment related workshops and networking opportunities during the program? And we do. So typically we will start to schedule those. First time you would probably be exposed to them is term 2 of year 1. So January of this coming year. And we hold them within our professional practice, transition to professional practice. There's a typo here. And I tried to click it, sorry. There's a typo here, but our transition to professional practice, professional development series. So they will be scheduled within your course schedule, so you don't have any course conflicts. We also typically have a career expo in January that was virtual last year. I believe the virtual pages are still available. You could check them out if you wanted to see the type of school boards and employers that came. And we'll have a career expo again next year. Many teacher candidates do work during the summer between year 1 and 2. So you'll see the question asking what type of jobs. You could work anywhere, but many teacher candidates choose education related jobs like daycares or summer camps or tutoring companies. There's all sorts that are related. We regularly hear from employers that are looking to hire teacher candidates, and we post those opportunities to our job board. You'll see the link there. That's year round. We are posting over the summer as we receive them too, so you can start looking at that anytime. Another related question was about the math test. You might have heard of this. Is it required for graduating? The math proficiency test is not required for your Bachelor of Education, but it's required to get your Ontario teaching license. So that's why you've probably heard about it. Before you are able to get your full Ontario teaching certificate, you'll have to pass the test. It is online right now, about 2 hours, not on site, that's a typo, but it's 2 hours online, 75 questions, mostly math content up to grade 9, but some pedagogy questions as well. And we have several resources that are going to come up again in another slide and at this link here. You could start taking it anytime, but you'd have to pass it before you get your teaching license. And then this last question, I'm going to turn it over to Courtney to answer about the IB program.
Yeah, so you can absolutely complete the IB program alongside the BEd program. The IB program is actually completed fully online, so you don't have to attend any on-site classes for that program. And you can typically expect to devote about 10 to 12 hours per week to the IB program. So it is doable to do alongside with your BEd program, absolutely.
Okay, I can answer these ones as well. And then Kathy, if you want to jump in and add anything I maybe don't say, feel free. So bursaries for sure. There are actually quite a few bursaries for BEd students, and we've got the links provided here. There are a couple of deadlines. October 31st is a typical deadline for the fall term, and then January 31st for the winter term. So you can, if you apply in the fall term and don't receive a bursary, you can actually apply again for the winter term and try again there. So that's an application through the Student Center. It's not a faculty specific application. So if you are a Western student who've used that system before, it's the same process that you would have gone through. You simply complete a form that you will need to indicate your financial situation. And then it's the registrar's office that decides if you qualify for financial need, and then they simply send a list to us for consideration. The scholarships, the terminology is a bit interchangeable perhaps. So when I say bursaries, I mean the financial need-based ones, and those are what I was just talking about. In my mind, the scholarships are more the convocation kinds of awards that are merit-based. So practicum excellence, excellence within the BEd program. And so in our new pass-fail world, we are not obviously looking at grades anymore, but we are still going to be looking for evidence of your professionalism, excellence in the program that is demonstrated by your attendance, your professional growth, your respectful collegial participation in courses, in communications with us in the office, etc. And we will, we actually are working right now to define that a little better for all of you so that you have a better sense of what we'll be looking for. We'll be relying for those on your instructors, your associate teachers, which is the name given to the teachers you work with on practicum, and your mentors. We haven't talked about the mentoring yet, and while it doesn't have anything specifically to do with awards, I'll just maybe tell you a smidge about it. So all of you will be part of a small mentor group, no more than about 12 teacher candidates. The groups are randomly assigned. It's not based on Teachable or PJ or JI or anything like that. And you'll be with a master teacher mentor who might be an instructor in our program, might be a recently retired teacher, might be a teacher still working. And those mentors work with you throughout your 2 years. It's a place where you can debrief after practicum, where you can talk about what's happening in courses and about your own growth. You're going to track within that program your professional practice record leading up to your oh my gosh, I'm going to lose track of what it's called, annual learning plan. And this is meant to mirror what your professional growth looks like once you are finished the BEd. So within your career, you will always be striving to meet your own professional goals, and you actually have to document that for your principal. So that's kind of in a very short description what the mentoring is all about. But since I've mentioned mentors, you might wonder what I meant by that. And so indeed, the graduation with distinction also revolves around demonstrations of excellence that I just talked about. So we'll make sure more detail is posted on the website as we more specifically define these things. Kathy, is there anything else?
Yeah, I think you did a great job, Anna. All I would add is that we are currently consulting with students as well as our colleagues in the profession, and looking at, how to put this into terminology that you can all recognize, and sort of take a stock for yourselves of how am I doing in each of these areas. And so we're in process of doing that, but it's aligning with, as I said before, the way that we admit you into the program, what we expect when you're here, and how we recognize that in these awards as you are graduating. So we want that consistency and that alignment, and they, rather than just a grade, which certainly reflects hard work for many people, less hard work for other people. We actually want to see action, I suppose. We want to see this shift in your attitude as well as your knowledge and skills in the way that you interact with people, because that's what has to go into the classroom, right? That ability to communicate as a professional, to assume that professionalism in all your interactions. You will hear from us in orientation about your web presence. There are advisories that are on the Ontario College of Teachers website, and some of you may want to give serious thought as to your presence on Facebook and other social media sites, and what that communicates, because I guarantee you when you go into teaching, you are in the public eye, and teachers, other teachers, potential employers, parents, and your students will look you up. And they will be very interested in your social media presence. So I've seen a number of teachers who have, sort of changed their name, but they've also scrupulously gone through to look at what's there and what am I communicating if somebody did happen to see this, because this is the world that we're living in. And you have to think about what kind of professional presence do you want to take into your employment.
Thank you, Kathy. So I think for this next slide, perhaps Sarah or Flo might like to speak to this.
Sorry
sure.
about that. Oh, go ahead, Flo.
I'll just talk to the peer mentorship program. So last year, to my or last year's Education Student Council, they're the ones who set up the peer mentorship program, and they set it up because they knew that we'd be online, and they realized that there'd be many things that us then year one students wouldn't be able to learn. With you guys going back to in person, we still have to decide as to what's going to happen if we will have the peer mentorship program. But we hope to have a decision for you guys ready soon. Let's see here.
Flo, I can jump in with this one as well. Sorry, I was just answering a question, which is what slowed me down on the same topic, the math proficiency test again. There is supports available right now if you wanted to. The Ontario Teachers Federation is running ongoing preparation supports throughout the summer. So you can Google the Ontario Teachers Federation and find those and attend anytime. I also just answered a question in the Q&A about, can I take the test now? And you can. The only requirement to taking the test is having an active Ontario College of Teachers number. You get a number as soon as you start an application to the Ontario College of Teachers. That seems funny that you can do it now, but you can. You could start an application now. Obviously, you won't be able to finish it until you complete the BEd, but by having an open Ontario College of Teachers application, you will thereby have an Ontario College of Teachers number, which will then allow you access to the math proficiency test. So you can register for that. You can also visit that link there for more resources. We've developed some practice tests and some webinars that you can watch. And then we may have additional events and supports coming out throughout the school year. So stay tuned. I'll turn it back to you, Flo, for the current student question.
Thanks, Katie. So then just looking at the question here about the Facebook page. I know there's a current Facebook page for our now year 2 students. Typically there's someone in the year 1 group who has to be the one to step up and create that Facebook group. I think last year it was around this town hall was when someone also made it. So if there's anyone, or I guess if no one from year 1 has created a Facebook page yet, right now would be a great opportunity, and then they can share a link right now. And then if someone does, I'd kindly request that you invite me and other Education Student Council members too. That way it's much easier for you guys to reach out to us. And then we can answer your questions from year 2 students pretty easily then too.
One just came through the chat. Victoria
Cool.
just shared a link to the Facebook page for the 2023 graduating class. All right.
And then I guess I should mention too that the Education Student Council are also on Facebook and Instagram. So there we'll be sending out some updates too. And then we'll also have monthly, monthly updates that come through email too.
And I'll chime in for one last question on this slide, which is about recent graduates. We tend to have at least 1 or 2 recent graduates, maybe more, come back, usually tied to the employment prep events. So keep an eye out for our professional development series for those connections. And that's our last slide of prepared questions, but we still have Q&A coming in and we can continue to answer those throughout. Is there anything that you wanted to add, Anna or Kathy, that we didn't cover? Joanne?
I just have, I see that there's been a question posed about education employment opportunities. And I know that Katie's going to send a link from the College of Teachers, who does track and create a report each year about what the outcomes look like for getting jobs in teaching. It's been all over the map, as you can imagine, in the last few years. The shortage seems to be disappearing, or sorry, the surplus of teachers seems to be disappearing, and we've entered a phase where we have a shortage and we expect that shortage to continue. It's always difficult when the funding is driven by the provincial government, and class sizes, changes to class sizes can make enormous differences in what that looks like. But suffice it to say that the prospects to get a job right now are looking very, very good. We are hearing that there are expected retirements this year. It's been very difficult for school boards to get occasional teachers, who are usually those teachers that supply, and they're on the list looking for full-time jobs, and they've all been taken up. And so a lot of the kinds of professional development opportunities that happened at the school board level have had to be canceled because of a lack of supply teachers to allow them to take up those professional development opportunities. It's one of the reasons why there was an emergency teacher certification, temporary teacher certification that was issued this year for teachers to be certified and to go in as temporarily certified teachers as soon as, and in some cases before the program finished this year. So questions about jobs are things that we will be visiting over the course of year 2 years. There will be opportunities to hear not only about what positions might be available in Ontario, but internationally for those that are interested in traveling. And we also invite people to talk about, people who took a Bachelor of Education degree and went into a different kind of profession entirely with that skill set, because that has increasingly become viewed as something that is quite valuable. So you're not going to take in all of the information today. You're not going to take it in all on our orientation day. You've got 2 years of scaffolded information that gets released to you over time. Some of it is done in what we call a spiral curriculum way. That is, we introduce it, we come back and we give you a little more information, we come back and we give you a little more information, because you can't take it all in. There's a lot to learn. But after 40 years in the profession, I can tell you, you've picked the right one. It's a wonderful, wonderful profession to join. So we're just so excited that you've chosen Western. We're very happy that you joined us today. And I hope that even meeting us virtually will help you feel welcome. When you do get to come back on site, to stop by and see us in the office, and to know that we're ready to answer questions anytime. Okay, anything else from anyone? Oh, one other little question, sorry, before I go. There's a question about, will we have a course or something related to how to teach online? So you're lucky. Western has been teaching online for additional qualifications courses, for graduate courses, full educational doctorate courses, masters, for 20 years. And so we have a lot of experience teaching full online courses, not pivoting in an emergency and having to scramble. Although we did have to do that in our teacher ed program, because we did not typically teach our teacher ed program online. But we very quickly partnered with our colleagues in the school boards and with some student interns again. And we created something last year. If you go to online-teacher.ca, you will see a micro-credential that we created. It's free. You can work on it. Thanks for putting it. I think, is that in for the panelists or for everybody? For everybody? Okay. It's a little micro credential that you can take. The reason we worked with our school board partners is because we work with 44 different school boards across Ontario, and they all have different platforms that they may use in their school. Some are Google Classrooms, some are not, some use Microsoft, some use eCampus through the board. Like there's just a lot of different tools and technologies. And we wanted to give our teacher candidates the breadth of what was being used in schools right now. And so I invite you to take a look at that and go through it at your own pace. It's not marked. It's one of those things that you can explore, you can create, you can add to the community from what you've learned, and it's growing. So I think that you'll find that there's a little bit of information there. But there's also technologies and digital experiences that are embedded throughout your program. So you know, as Courtney's told us, the IB program is entirely online. There may be aspects of other courses that are online. We have a mental health literacy course, which is offered in second year. We're the only teacher education program in the country to do this. It is entirely online, but the majority of your courses are fully on site with use of digital technology strongly promoted throughout. Okay, that's all I have. No open questions I see, so I can tell that's been ended. Okay. Anybody have final words? Good, I see some people thinking this was helpful. That's our goal. Okay. So I want to thank the students who joined us for today's session. It's always helpful to have your voices as part of this discussion. I certainly want to thank all of the members of the Teacher Education Office. You will find that they are phenomenal. We hear this from our Federation and union partners as well. We aim to do the best that we can for our students, and that comes across in all of the ways that they interact with you. So thank you to all of them for putting this together. And you'll hear from us, as Anna has said, keep an eye on that UWO email. I will be sending out a survey at some point that I hope you participate in. That just helps us to get to know this crop of students and what your aspirations are and your fears and a little bit more. So just keep an eye and have a fabulous, safe summer. Take a break. This has been a really taxing 18 months. So take that break, and we cannot wait to welcome you in September. So take care, everybody.